sort of native impulse to organize in her head a list of things she wanted to say. And that suggested it may be that that's her personality type, or that she's my kid or something. But I think children love that. They love pattern. So one of the lovely things about a list is that it's such a gracious form. It's not like an outline. And in fact, in my years of teaching people to write, I really discourage outlines, because my experience with being taught to do those highly structured outline that most of us learned in some English class is that once you have that architecture, you don't have room for anything surprising to happen. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you just say, what are 5 things I know I want to say? Or what are, 10 questions I have I really want to get at here? Or 3 questions, or whatever. But a list just always leaves room for more, and also it allows you to rearrange the list as you go along. So its pliability is part of its pleasure.
We're going to take a short break. You're listening to Your Family's Health on the Voice of Nassau Community College at 90.3 WHPC. This is Dr. Jeanine Cook, and we will continue talking with Marilyn about Make a List, and we'll be back after this short break.
If your skin could talk, would you listen?
As your skin, I forgive you. I forgive you for poking and popping me when I broke out at 14. I forgive you for that awful belly ring hole you left in me when you were 15. I forgive you for damaging me before prom, on spring break, and at tanning salons when you were 16, 17, 18. But I'm your skin, and if you continue to tan, I hope you can forgive me. Forgive me when wrinkles begin to show and I start developing age spots. Forgive me if I develop melanoma when you're only 22. So please, I'm asking you to stop. Stop tanning now. Our future depends on it.
Protect your skin from melanoma, the second most common cancer in young women 15 to 29 years old. And protect your future. Learn more at spotskincancer.org. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
90.3 WHPC.
Welcome back to Your Family's Health. This is Dr. Jeanine, and I'm here with Giovanni. And welcome back our guest, Marilyn McEntryre. Are you there, Marilyn?
I'm right here.
Okay, great. We're here talking about a wonderful book, Make a List, and Giovanni has a question for you.
So, Marilyn, your book discusses the slow language movement. Can you elaborate on that?
Oh, yes. How much time do you have? I don't think I'm a very good example of it, because since I've taught timed classes for so long, I tend to speak quickly when I feel as though there's a lot to say. But some of the teachers I've really thought of as my mentors have been people who give space to their words. I think that everything in the culture North Americans live in pushes us toward greater speed and momentum. And we all know that that's creating stress, which creates disease, which creates family difficulties, and so on. Slowing down is really countercultural these days. Wendell Berry is one of my favorite contemporary writers, and he's a wonderful example in his pace, in his writing, in his speaking, of speaking in such a way as to allow you to internalize, really hear and digest a sentence before you move on. So I think there's a strong analogy between slow language and slow food. That when we eat, the human thing to do is sit down around a table, share food with each other, give it a kind of sacramental quality, if you choose that word, and make food, restore the ritual character of communing and eating together, rather than gobbling down the fast food that more and more Americans do in the car, on the way to work, or at the computer at lunchtime. And similarly, it would be such a lovely discipline to, and I've tried this sometimes, to really hear the period in the sentence. I had a professor who did this beautifully. When he was done with a sentence, there was just a little extra pause. And you could sit with it for that split second before you moved on. It's like reading poetry. When you pause at the end of the line, not enough to lose the sentence, but enough to say, that was a whole line. So I think slow language could do something to restore what I think of as the sacred character of utterance. It's really an ancient idea that language is a gift, and it's what makes us one of the things that distinguishes us as humans.
And you mentioned this a list being turning into a prayer or a poem, and I'm also thinking of the list being affirming on in a relationship. Tell me how it can be sort of a love letter, probably to someone that you love or to yourself.
Yeah. Well, I've mentioned things I've noticed about you this year, which is, I think, a sweet way to celebrate someone's birthday and really to summon up your own pleasure and appreciation in that person. But also, I've made a practice every year of giving my husband a poem or sometimes a list on our anniversaries. And one year, it was, he has recently retired and taken up painting in a big way, and it's really fun to see what's emerging. So a couple of years ago, I did a poem on just the colors in his life and where I see the reds and where I see the yellows and where the greens come up. And it was so much fun to do that. But all it started with, it ended up being a poem, but all it started with was a list of, I look around our house and this is the green you've brought into it, and this is the red you've brought into it, and I love that spot of orange, and so on. So that's a very personal way of just noting down what you see. And I think it can deepen relationship to notice. I think couples who have been together for a long time, or parents and kids who take each other for granted, or just sort of move through the tasks of the day and see each other as part of the landscape, forget to notice. And noticing is so much a part of staying in a healthy, loving relationship. And even thanking people for, thanks for taking out the trash. You've done it every week for 30 years, but thank you this time. Those kind of little things that I noted that down, end up on lists.
And it sounds like it allows the person to know that there affirms the person in your life, and it also validates them, that you're noticing the little things that they do to appreciate them. Because I know sometimes we move so fast. I know going to work every day, you take things and people and small things in life for granted. So this sounds like something that even is wonderful in the classroom to even write down and jot down. You said you're a professor as well, that you can have students to jot down things or lists of things as they feel them, or as something comes to their conscious awareness, or even something that's not in the conscious awareness that they come to a realization of on paper. So this is very good, and this fosters creativity, does it not?
Oh, it does. Like, I have a very simple little list just called Listen. When the kids were little, I used to take them on listening walks, or sometimes smell walks or something, where they would just have to say, "What do you hear? What do you hear? What do you hear?" And that's a wonderful kind of list to make recurrently. So just to give you an example, because I have it here in front of me, I was sort of paging through some of the lists at the end of the book. But listen to the hum of insects, to the cries of the poor, to the spirit who speaks in silence, to your dreams, to your heart. Listen for the lesson, to the voices of the morning, for the word you need, to waves, to Bach, to the very young and the very old, to the beat of the dance, and listen through the noise to the music. So as you see, some of the items there are really simple and immediate, like the hum of insects. And the cries of the poor is big. So it changes the landscape of listening and the scope of awareness in an instant from one line to another. And that's another thing about lists, is that what's big and what's little begin to be convergent. Like the little things are the big things in disguise. And it disrupts our notions of what's important and what's less important.
When is your best time to have this type of writing? It sounds to me like you need a place of solitude or some place where you can go to be at peace or at within yourself, that you can look in yourself to kind of make this kind or do this kind of writing.
Right.
What is your best time that you find or that you would suggest?
Well, I'm a morning person, and I'm also an introvert, so that's, we have to find our own ways of doing things, but I love getting up early in the morning and
Me too.
doing something brief like this. And I always light a candle. I love candles. That kind of centers me. And so when we mentioned that a list can become a prayer, sometimes it is a kind of meditative, prayerful moment of, I'm just going to put these things down and sit with them and then move on into the day. But that said, sometimes things just occur to me in the middle of other things, like I'm writing the grocery list and I flip the paper over and write a different kind of list. Or after a phone call, I might note down 3 or 4 things that occurred to me. So there's something about a list that can also occupy those little by-the-way moments that aren't assigned to anything else. Or you scribble them on the back of something in the middle of things because they occurred to you and you can come back later. So I think they are worthy of the sacred moments, but I also think they can just be a habit of mind. And they do become a habit of mind. Some of my friends who know me well kind of laugh at me when I say, there are a whole list of things to do, list of possibilities here, and they kind of roll their eyes. Oh, another list.
Tell us, how do we find your book? How can you have the listeners to find the book? This is very healing.
Much as I hate to say it, you can always find things on Amazon, and it's on Amazon. The publisher is another place to order it, and I think they're still offering a discount. That's Erdmans.com, EERDMANS. And if you want to see any of my other books, my website is MarilynMcEntryre.com.
Could you spell the last name for us?
Yes, it's an unusual spelling. So the whole website is MarilynMcEntryre.com.
And if you had 1 or 2 words to leave the listening audience with, what would that be about your book?
I would hope that this book would serve as an invitation to play. I really hope that people read it and start making their own lists and find them life-giving and share them and move a little more pleasure around in a world that's really pretty full of sorrow.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We want to thank you, our guest, Marilyn McEntryre, for being with us today, and also here with Giovanni Petit Frere. And we want to thank you, our listening audience, for being with us and listening and tuning in to your family's health.